Alright, hey guys, I'm going to do another Golf Clash tutorial video for you, and the one thing that I have never really touched on and wanted to kind of take some time to go about putting a tutorial on is going to be for overpower and underpower shots. So it is a very important subject, but it's something that I've never really put any content out whatsoever. So I'm going to do it with Tour 10, and I'm going to also, actually, let me look at this. Thanks. Where am I at? 25? So you sure you don't want to sit with us? No, I'm fine. Let's just do something a little bit different. I think I've been doing a lot of 10 recently. So I'm going to step back somewhere that I haven't really touched in a while. I'll go back to 8. And I put Guardian on, but I want to focus on overpower and underpower. So first things, every driver is going to be a little bit different. Same with every wood. They're going to have different accuracies. So I will switch out a few clubs and so I will switch out some clubs a couple times and go over things thoroughly. But here you can see, look at when I extend this. This extends 3.5 rings into power. So what does that tell me? So if it extends 3.5 rings into power, let's think about what that means. So first, let me just put this in play real quick. And so 3.5 rings is full max overpower. The extra mile is 2.1 per ring. So that basically tells me that there's about 7 yards of overpower. Because 2.1 per ring times 3 rings, 6.3, plus an extra half, which is about 1, 7.4, 7.3. So there's about 7.3 yards, and that'll be standard for any club. So you would need to convert that. So let's say I was using quarterback. Then that means that I'd have 7 rings of overpower on my quarterback. 7.3, more specifically. It's not an exact number, but the way to figure out how much you can overpower is based off of everything that I just mentioned there. And let me see if I can size this up real quick. Let's see if I can keep this on the fairway. Looks like I can. I'm going to try to hit this with a underpower shot, just so we can kind of get in the ballpark of what I need to do. So I'm going to line up basically the 3rd ring over or so. I'm going to try to hit 3 rings of underpower here, more or less. So I do want to show you guys what I visually think this is probably going to look like. And you can see distance-wise, that looked maybe about pin high. So you can see what I'm doing with the ball there is I was putting it just short of the circle. Now, I do want you to know, if you stay inside the circle, and you'll see a lot of guys do this on pitch, so that's another thing that I'm going to touch on, is when you do it with a pitch. Because it's one of the most common errors that you'll see guys do, is they'll try to hit this, well, this is a perfect example, this rapier shot here. But then, and another thing, don't try to land. You can see my opponent landed a second hop on a weird mound. Never tried to do that. But here, this is a perfect example. So you can see my opponent, he just short hit that one ring. So I don't know if he, realized that he did that. But, it's something that you really want to avoid doing. And if you, God, this guy with the emojis is really starting to just get a little bit too much. But as I mentioned, let me just show you some things here. So this is at least a ring under power. This right here is probably about a ring. This is more like 2 rings of under power right here. And vice versa. So here is about a ring of overpower, and here's about 2 rings of overpower. So it just shows you how much margin for error is actually in that shot circle, and something that you definitely need to be aware of and to be very careful about when you go about playing your guys' rounds. Because especially on those pitches, I'll see from so many times where guys will, at the beginning of a pitch, after they did their adjustment, they will, put it on the very top of the circle, and then they'll miss, or they'll leave it short, or the ball guide will change, and they don't realize what. So, you always want to check your, scan the zone, and see if you can, test the area to make sure that it's smooth in all surfaces, within 1-2 rings of your shot circle, because when you go about setting your power like that, it's going to short hit. So you do need to be very cautious of that. Now, what I'm going to try to do on this shot is I'm going to try to do an overpower shot intentionally. And I might as well. So, I do have Guardian set up. So one of the things that you can do with Guardian, well, I was planning on it. This might be a little touchy. Might just hit this one. One thing that we can talk about for this shootout, first off, I'm going to keep my ball guide long and to the left, because after I play this wind, it's going to deflect. Another thing that I do is I play a little bit beyond max here. So here you can see what I'm doing with my guide. Be very careful with how I go about setting up here. And you're going to see me go 6 rings here for a 6 win. Now, Guardian is 1.2 per ring. So you should never have to go this much, right? But here you can see that it's landing very similarly to how I set up, and that I'm able to jump in here about a yard. Now, keep in mind the compression there. I can't even deal with this guy. Like, he's just off the charts with the emojis, so I'm just ducking out of this. One thing that I want you guys to realize is if you have a shot like that and you leave the ball guide long, there's going to be a compression factor. When you actually hit the ball, that ball guide is going to compress. So even though it appeared to be long into the left, after the wind affected the ball and it landed, it got over towards the right more and condensed. So it didn't expand out as far, and that's why you can see. And, I knew it was going to do that just from experience. So this is just something that you can, use as a learning tool for yourself. And I realized that I didn't really get a Guardian hole, but I did want to talk about Guardian as well. So let me go back into Tour 8. See if I can't get somebody else real quick. Par 4 again. I might try to lay up. So the only time I really overpower and underpower, there's really only 3 situations. I try to always center the ball in the guide, in that ball guide, the little shot circle. I always center it, no matter what the situation. The only exceptions are overpower shots. If I'm right at min club, sometimes I might short hit just a little bit. And I did briefly touch on that. I showed you an approach, which was about 3 rings of an underhit. The only thing that was really, really challenging was trying to visualize. So you saw in that 3 from the last hole, the only thing that was kind of challenging was trying to figure out the angle and try to size up where the, so you saw me hit it way out to the left, but it looked distance-wise that, you know, where I started with my ball guide power-wise, and then where the ball, after a short hit, it was basically right side the hole. So as I mentioned last time, you know, we have 3.5 rings of power here, and 2 point, you know, I'm also going to be looking maybe at, you know, if I go full power there, I'm not going to. I'm going to do a short hit here. So one thing that I can show you guys is if I landed it about here, it will stay in the fairway. So I'm going to go up about 3 rings. Seeing that I have to do a 3-ring short hit, you're going to see me put it towards the front of the circle. And I'm just going to, you know, do that 3-ring short hit. And here you can see that the ball is checking up nicely. It's kind of an alternate way to do it. You know, that's roughly 3 rings or so of an underplay. But I wanted to put myself to guardian distance again so I could just go over it. I'm not going to hit the power shot. This is what I was going to do for you guys. But then I realized on the shootout that it really had no practical full power shot. So I ended up aborting. But I did want to get to a full guardian distance to where I could go over and discuss. Because how I mentioned to you guys on the last hole that the driver has about 12 yards. No. 7.3 yards of overpower. The wood is completely different. And these are the only 2 clubs I do it on. It's the driver and wood. So don't ask me numbers about long irons. I'm never going to overpower a long iron. There's never a situation where it comes into play because I always have that wood no matter what. Like it's always in my bag. So there would be no need for me to do it. Let me just show you this real quick. So here you can see, here's where the full power is. And let me extend this. You can see that's where the fringe is. So if I pull back, you know, you guys can visually see this. This is probably at least 9 rings for sure. You can see when I pull back towards the fringe there, you can see that it's, you know, 9-ish rings. So 9-ish rings of full overpower is probably, if I had to guess, let me just dial this up real quick. So 9-ish rings at 1.2 per ring is at least 11. It's around 11. So you have about 11 yards of overpower. Probably at least 11. You know, it could be, you know, just a little fraction more than that. But that's just a good, nice round number for you. But keep in mind, based on your club's accuracy, that's what's going to change that. Because that number is going to be fixed. No matter what club you have, that overpower, the only thing that might modify it slightly, but I really don't think it does. No, I really don't think it does. So even when I, for example, I'm going to switch to sniper for you guys. I think sniper is still going to have 11 or 12 yards itself. And, you know, it's a shorter club. So you would think if a club was longer, maybe it would have a little bit more overpower because it's a percentage based. But I don't think it is percentage based. I think it's fixed. Let me just talk about this shootout real quick. Now, I am pretty sure I usually overplay this one as well. This is actually a very nice win for this hole because of the fact that I can actually do this shot and land it on the green. So if you guys have ever seen my shootouts, I don't usually get to put it on the green. But here I'm going to get to. So here you can see I can keep the ball guide long, again, just like similarly to the last hole. But I know that the ball guide's going to compress. And I'm going to play it exactly how I just did before. 6 rings. I'm going to add a little bit of curl. Trying to bend it around the pin. I'm basically trying to make sure that it doesn't hit the pin. And there you can see it landing very close to my intended land zone and giving it a very good chance. So you're going to be able to see that, in Tour 8, you guys can, with Guardian, just tear up these shootouts. If you guys haven't seen my guy, I haven't played these holes in months, but, it's just basically repetition and course knowledge. You could put me on any hole. They come up with these new holes, these new Oasis holes. And because I have fundamental knowledge of the game, it doesn't matter what the hole is. And this is part of the reason that, I've mentioned to you guys that you really don't need additional content from me. Everything I've put out there so far is enough for you to be, one of the best players. If you actually take it and learn everything that I talk about, that I say, that I do, all these win factors and everything collectively, you'll be able to take these methods and apply them to any hole, any situation, whether it's brand new. It's just about learning the fundamentals of the game. And that's going to be the biggest key to self-improvement for you guys, is to just getting over that hurdle. So let me change up my clubs a little bit. I'm going to change to a POC. Now, don't be worried that my a POC is. Let me. Either that or rock. Either. It really doesn't matter. Let me just show you one thing. So a POC is 84 accuracy. That's 1.3 per ring. So I do want you guys to be aware of that, because what did I say? 7.3 rings, right? 7.3-ish. So when I switch to, in fact, let me play one hole with a really, really crazy wood, something that has almost no accuracy. 50, 30. That'll help me, hopefully. Smaller bullseyes. I'm just trying to think. Well, may or may not. If it goes outside a bullseye. Yeah, let me try this. Let me try Horizon. This will help us get that approximation that I was mentioning. So I'll go a POC Horizon, and 1.3 times 5 is 6.5. And that means it would need to be another half ring, right? Somewhere around 5.5 rings. So when we go to play this hole, and let me talk about Horizon real quick. So Horizon is 2.4 per ring. So 5 rings would be exactly 12. This is actually going to be good, because I was mentioning that I think it's between 11 and 12, maybe closer to 11. But let me put Horizon on so we can talk about it in depth. And we did get a par 5, of course. Of course, I put Horizon on. And of course, it's probably going to be a hole that I have to use it and can't do anything with it because it's so awful. I don't know if you guys are looking at my bag, but it's actually the least progressed club in my entire bag. For some reason, I cannot get Horizon cards. In fact, if you guys were looking at my woods, it's actually probably pretty hilarious. Everything's max, and then Horizon, I cannot. With all those tournaments, you would think that I could get some Horizon cards. I cannot get Horizon cards. It's been like that since January. It's just been sitting there, not getting any progress whatsoever. It's pretty comical. But remember what I said back at the tee? Let me extend this real quick. And just like I mentioned, let me turn it sideways for you guys. 5.5 rings. 5.7 maybe. 5.7 rings or something. So that means, 7.5 yards is virtually exactly kind of where I was mentioning. Now I am going to lay up a little bit because with Horizon, I'm not going to be able to do much of anything. So with a Horizon layup, I do want to kind of set myself up for more of a topspin approach because I can't stop the ball. I don't even think it has backspin, or it has very, very minimal. I'm just going to lay up very far back so I can bring it in. Plus, I want to at least size it up so you guys can see an overpower shot. Well, I'm not going to hit it with an overpower shot, hopefully, but I at least want to be able to pull it so we can test how many yards you have of overpower by using the rings. And as I mentioned, I'm almost certain of this, that it doesn't matter your club level. It's a non-factor. In fact, you could see my Guardian was an 8 and my Horizon's a 5, and we should still have a fixed amount. It's going to be somewhere between 4 and 5 rings. So let me show you this. Let me pull it up, and there you can see it. So this visually looks like let's call it 4.2. So 4.2 rings on a Horizon. And let me just put this in play real quick. Figure out a way to do this. I'm going to just do this the shank method. I would never do that into a green, but for a layup, sure. We don't need precision there. So, but as I was mentioning, okay, so for these overpowers, so 4.2 times 2.4, what's that? See if I can find this real quick. 10. Oh, that seems a little light. That doesn't make sense. So that seems a little fishy, because I know that we just sized it up and it was maybe a little bit more than that. 10 rings of overpower doesn't really seem true. So maybe it does have to do, maybe it is based off of distance a little bit, a tiny bit. But it would only be a yard difference. So it almost seems, you know, and, you know, this is kind of unexplored territory for me because, you know, I would never play with Horizon. So for most clubs, you know, I don't notice a difference. So I can tell you basically how negligible it actually is. So let me size this up here real quick. Here you can see max. We're going to play this about mid. 1.5 per ring. I like to play my mid. Very close to. You are going to see me just overcorrect slightly to account for this wind. So instead of just going 4 rings, you are going to see me fractionally go more than that. Perfect ball. And do be careful to be very centered. And there you can see that post-wind effect that I was mentioning. You can see that even with the overpull, that the ball starts to curl a little bit. It was turning there, and it's just straight coming up that hill. So that's wind effect. It's not the slope in the green. It was breaking like that towards the hole because of wind effect. So even with the little slight overcorrection, I didn't quite overcorrect enough. So it's just something to always be thinking about when you're pitching. Doesn't matter what club you're pitching with. But just something for you to always be constantly thinking about. But in terms of, you know, for all intents and purposes, you know, what I would recommend for you guys is use about 11 yards for your max overpower. Oh, wow. So I'm going to have to do this with Horizon. Did I get downwind? Of course. Why would they hook me up? So you need 2.5 backspin. I don't have 2.5 backspin. So this is going to be one of the more interesting shots I've ever shot in my entire life. To say the least. So let's see if I can figure this out. Definitely going to try to bump it into this fringe. I usually try to hit it into the front of the green, and I can't do that here. great ball, of course. So that's probably going to put me in the sand. So that's how little my margin of error is with Horizon. As a general rule of thumb, don't play Horizon. If I did that with a sniper, I'd still be okay. Probably up by the hole. Don't do that. Come on, dude. All you got to do is put it on the green. Also, don't do this. Like, just take the... Like, I'm worried that, this guy will mess this shot up now and lose. You should just take the easy shot. But, it's still manageable. He should still be able to pull it off. This is just not the time for a great ball. Well, that's probably the way that... It looked like he underplayed the wind. So, the way that he great balled it was actually for his best interest to get it more centered up. So, But I am going to bring Sniper out, so I'm going to go put that in my bag real quick. I don't usually play Sniper in Tour 8, but I will for you guys for one hole real quick, just so I can briefly touch on the subject. Hopefully I can get it up to on this next one. I'll try to keep it off the green, and we'll talk a little bit more about a pitch. But for the most part, I really don't short hit pitches, but I did want to at least show you visually what it looks like and how much something looks like. So here, let me put Sniper on real quick. Oops. That's actually probably the tour I should play. But you can win this tour with Sniper too. You just, I look at Sniper for this tour as, a club that you can win, say, 60% of your matches with. But if you want to get that level up to, closer to 70, then you should learn the Guardian shots. So that's kind of the way that I look at things. And wow, we just got a mega wind. It would be ideal to get up there by the green. That's another place that some guys that I see short hit things is Nirvana Shots. Now, the same type of thing applies with the rough shots. When you use the shot circle, those distances that I give you are relatively fixed. That shot circle has about at least 3 or 4 rings of precision in it. I hope this guy doesn't forfeit. So let me hit it up here real quick. I really don't know how to hit this at all. We're going to guess. Educated guess. I'm going to try to hit it into the tree. I don't know. Let's try that. Very little power. A little bit of curl. Why not? So very minimally powered. I'm assuming with a massive wind. Do note that I'm kind of intentionally keeping it off the right of that fairway. It looks like I missed it. I was trying to hit it on the very right edge, and what that does is it creates a better angle to get around the tree. And you can see that I just missed it by maybe a ring. So and one of the reasons that I was actually putting it over to the right, I was hoping with how much I was curling, but I didn't curl enough. With all that curl, it actually over curls back onto the fairway. But it looks like I just missed it. It was less than a ring, or about a ring. But, do be mindful of that power. So full overpower, I mentioned this on the last hole, is, what did I say it was? It was about 5.5 rings, right? So for Apocalypse, and it's entirely base, but another technique that I want to just briefly touch on, when I have this guy, I'll lay up for sure. Another technique that I just want to briefly touch on is actually, I'm going to set this up to hit, and then I'll just end up hitting it perfect ball over here or something. This guy's just probably like, what in the world is this guy doing? But let me briefly touch on this real quick for overpower. So here's max, right? Here's nothing. So what is the distance in between there, you know. So this is going to be kind of like the halfway point right in here. This is going to kind of be like a quarter up in here. This is going to be kind of like 3/4. So use that also as an indicator for you. So you can subdivide how much power you're using and just kind of split the difference depending on the club. So what did we say about a POC? 5.5 rings, right? It has 5.5 rings of overpower. If I was to split that in quarters, what's 5.5 divided by 4? It's about a ring and almost 1.4 per segments. So if I need an extra ring and a quarter, 1.4 rings, well, then I'm going to use quarter power, or I'm going to pull it to half power. And you can use those colors, and I'm going to do the best that I can to kind of put together some kind of color reel for you guys. So that'll be the next venture. But let's talk a little bit about this pitch again, because there's so many guys that do this topspin shot. Another thing, avoid this surface. So make sure that you put it onto the green, like so. And also, you know, be mindful of this. You know, this is 1 to 2 rings. This is 1 to 2 rings. Center this thing up and release like this. Make sure that you are centered. I don't think people realize that there's so much precision loss inside that circle that it accounts for about 4 rings on an end bringer, for example. That is a lot of error. So, you know, you guys do need to be careful when you're going about. Let me clear this other one. See if I can't get one more chest for you guys, and then I'll end this. We are coming kind of, you know, to the bulk of the end of this guide, and I'm going to do the best that I can to you know, finish this up for you guys and explain just that last part of the tutorial that I was just talking about, which was the whole quarter power thing. So we mentioned sniper. So I think, do I have sniper on right? Yeah, I have sniper on right now. Oh, I didn't do sniper. So this is the perfect hole. So I'm going to show you guys sniper real quick, and I'll be able to show you using this technique. You know, very similar to what I mentioned with the driver, is if you need, so the first thing would be smart for you to do, which would be scan your fairway. If you're trying to get the bullseye target to a certain spot, let me show you this. So let's say I'm trying to get it up to half power. So look at this. So I need to get it to the bottom of the blue ring, right? So that's called about half power, for example. So if I want to land it there, well, in this case, the wind's going to blow it up to basically the white bullseye's edge. So that is something that you need to factor in. Let me spin this over towards the side. But let's say, in theory, that I'm trying to hit a half power shot. This isn't going to be one of those times. But what I would do is I would pull it back. I could, you know that this is kind of my half power shot, and I could release and say, oh, that's going to be half power for my APOC, and it's all going to be based off your accuracy. You need to extend that bullseye because they're all going to be a little different. But just keep in mind, well, you actually don't have to. You can do a division, and I'm gonna work on doing that for you momentarily. I'm gonna put together a list for you guys. And we're going to start mathematically doing this a little bit so we can break this down for you guys in terms of how much into power certain clubs are based off their accuracy. And basically all it is the size of the shot circle. So if, for instance, you know, my club, and you're going to see it perfectly on this hole. is, 10, 11 rings. I'll show you guys with this shot here. Let me just show you real quick. So here you can visually see it. We're going to turn it sideways. Here's max power. Here's into full power. And you can see this is probably, it is probably about 10 rings. So maybe I've been kind of overestimating that's at 11. But you can see visually that half power is probably about here. Full power is here. So it's probably about 10 rings. That's probably spot on. So we'll use those values. Let me just do this ring correction real quick. This is completely winged. Dialed up in 3 seconds and just pray. But you get the basic gist of what I'm trying to accomplish here. So what I'm going to try to do for you guys is I'm going to actually get you more information. But in summary, at least know this. The wood has approximately 10 rings of extra power. And if you want to know exactly, I would recommend using the horizon, but I calculated it to be, I believe, 10. So if it has 10 rings of extra power, all woods have 10 rings of extra power. Drivers have close to, we said, maybe 7.3, 7.4, somewhere in there. So the next thing that you can try to do is, no matter what your club is, let's say your accuracy is Thor's hammer, 64 for example, 1.7 per ring. 1.7 times 4 is 6.8, and then we just need a partial, maybe 4.4, 4.3, maybe 4.3 rings of total power. So Thor's hammer is easy, because if you were to break it into quarters, each quarter is an extra ring of power. So knowing these numbers can be a very helpful tool. And so this is actually very nice for me. I'm going to get a little redemption on this shootout. So here you can see that, this is going to be an interesting win. That wind's actually a little bit tougher. So let's see if I can't. I usually use 2.5. I'm going to come off the top spin a little bit. Where I usually end up hitting is right around here. So I'm still going to try to do that. But I am going to keep in mind, you can see what I'm doing with my ball guide. I'm kind of coming in a little bit more than I usually do. And that's because this wind's going to end up pushing it a little bit more. So in terms of ring play, I'm not going to use the shot button or anything, but you can see I'm going to go up close to about 9 rings here. I'm going to do a little bit of an overcorrection. Did not want that great ball, but I was hopefully trying to anticipate that. Nope, not enough. Crap, I needed perfect ball. So you can see what I was basically doing there as I was trying to estimate. And I'm going to do one more just to fill that chest for you guys. And I'm sure there's some last minute things that I can say. But the great ball there cost me. So that is something that you got to be a little careful of. I thought I was okay with that because I was doing a little bit of an overcorrection. But I wasn't careful enough with where I was positioning the guide. Because you can see the wind, even though I moved 9 rings and great balled it over 1, the net overall, the wind effect still pushed it way too much to the right. So it is something that you got to be a little careful of. But that gives us enough time to just do one last hole here and talk about this guide just a tiny bit more. So I do just want to fill this chest real quick. Ooh, I was close to hopping that. So, this is a perfect example, even though I'm assuming, most of us will probably just use full overpower in this situation. But just something to think about. is you can see with the 5 extra rings, you know, the wind's going to push it back to here. So wherever here is, this is where you have to assume that the ball is going to go. But just, you know, another way to think about this shot that I'm about to hit is I'm using about 5 extra rings into power. So, and it's going to vary based on your club accuracy, because we already said about Thor's hammer. We already said, you know, if we've already done Thor's hammer, we've already done Horizon, we've already done Guardian, and we've already done Sniper. Well, one of the things that you can do is you could really bust out a roller and actually get very specific on these estimates. You can even get better than I'm estimating right now, which would be a little bit useful, but at the same time, approximates of this is good enough, because there's no way we're going to be able to say, oh, I'm just going to go 4 rings of overpower. Like, that's never going to be a terminology that you can use, because it's going to be so hard to actually get to that fixed number. It's going to be virtually impossible to do. So that is the downside. And here you can see what I'm going to do with my B52 here. Just take off just slight. Now, what I usually do for this hole is I play an overplay. You know, maybe about twice per ring of what I would usually do. So I'm not even going to go 5 rings here. Well, almost 5 rings. And it looks like it just jacked to the side a little bit, and that's, you know, some wind effect plus that, you know, it's a very tough surface hit that I just did. Bumping it up that hill can be very challenging to actually get it to stay online, because it's such a mound. You know, it's very crowned. So if you're not hitting the crown at the exact angle, then it'll just deflect off to the left. If you hit it on the other side a little bit short, then it deflects off to the right. So when you have a crown like that, it makes it very, very hard, unless you have a straight angled wind, to actually make that shot. So side winds for that shot are very hard to make. And if you guys remember the last tournament that was here, if you guys saw me do any of my shots, I did try to make that. But for the most part, I did miss it a lot. But I also did get it, you know, 3 or 4 times. But you know, it was a very small number of times for a week of play. So, but you know, the thing that I do like about that rough bump, it's consistent. It just goes up. It's right by the hole. It's basically a thinkless approach. So you just have to do. You know, I just did like quick calculation, not much to it, and that was the end of it. So, you know, I hope you guys found this guide at least somewhat useful, and be on the lookout, because I'm actually, the next thing that I'm going to work on is actually getting you values, and hopefully set up a color wheel. So if I can get images and maybe subdivide it into, say, it's okay. So for example, Sniper had 10 rings, right? 10 rings of overpower. So if we could set up a color wheel for Sniper and have 10 varying colors, one for each ring, just a little bit darker than the next, and it would give you an estimate. You could say, oh, I just have to hit this color because I need to go 4 rings into power. So that's going to be what I'm going to be working on next for you guys. And, you know, do be on the lookout for that. But at the very least, in summary for you guys, I sized woods up for you. I sized driver up for you. And the wood was maybe 10 per ring. And the driver was maybe 7.3 per ring. Do be mindful when you're pitching around the green. Make sure that you're always putting that in the center of the shot circle. I told you about the pitches and how much room for error is in there. And it's so substantial that if you're doing those short hits, you know, don't expect to make it. Maybe it goes in. Maybe it goes in 90% of the time. But don't question it when you miss. If you want to short hit it, instead of doing that, just play the extra 2 rings. So that way you can be precise, and then when you actually pull your thumb back, just put it in the center every time. It's going to definitely increase your game. You're going to win more games because of it. You're going to miss less shots, and your ball guide's going to play more true. So good luck with those tips, guys, and be on the lookout for a part 2 to this of some sort that I mentioned in video that I'm going to be working on for you guys. So good luck out there, and catch you guys later.